Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show, and I want to give you a tasking before I start. I didn't give you one yesterday. There'll be days where I don't give you one, and days that I do, but here's your tasking for the day. I was having a conversation with someone earlier, and they were asking me how I know this is true or that is true, or do I believe this or believe that, and here's my answer for that, is that if you can't prove that it's true, or if you hear of a source or a source tells you something and you can't verify it, then you shouldn't trust it as being true. And so what I want you to do is to go and take some of the stuff that you believe or some of the stuff that you've been told in mainstream media, and I want you to see if you can dig up some dirt on it. Stop just sitting there and taking whatever they say as gospel truth. Pick one subject, do some research on it, and see if you can validate it. And let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. Well, it's day 2 of the Democrat convention. And, you know, here's what the Democrat convention reminds me of, or all these, even the Republican convention for that matter. Is, you know how you get, I've got some of this gum over here. What is it called? This is, you get a big old thing of it. The Orbit gum. And man, I tell you what, it's great when you first stick a piece in there. Hold on, let me see here. When you first start chewing it, it's good, man. The flavor is unbelievable. And that lasts for a few minutes. And then after a few minutes, the flavor kind of starts to disappear, that little candy shell that they have around a lot of these gums these days. Once that's gone, the flavor starts to disappear. But after a few minutes, I'd say maybe 10 minutes, it actually starts to kind of give you a headache because the flavor is, it's not really there anymore. You just kind of feel the tingle of it. And then after about 15 minutes, if you chew it that long, it just becomes disgusting and you just want to spit it out. Let me spit this out. So it's interesting because when I tried to watch a few minutes of this convention because I'm motivated by things like Bill Hemmer, who I've met Bill Hemmer at Fox News. He probably wouldn't remember who I am, but I met him and he was a nice enough guy. But the headline on foxnews.com reads, Bill Hemmer explains which states Biden needs to win to secure 2020 victory. And then when you click on it, the headline's even worse. But I tweeted this out and said, hey, Bill Hemmer, I fixed your headline. Stop acting like this is just another election. And I put under there where it says this is what he needs to win to secure the 2020 victory. I said, and usher in communism, because that's the reality. When I listen to these weirdos at the Democrat convention, most of who even Democrats wouldn't vote on, right? Most of these people are people who didn't get any kind of votes in the primaries at all for presidential candidate. The most of the people that are speaking at the Democrat Party, that and the celebrities that nobody gives two craps about. I can't even remember what her name is, the one that's hosting the show, Eva Longoria. What has she ever done, even in acting? Okay, she's never done anything that puts her in a position to be speaking about how, this country is great, except for the fact that, hey, she's what you would consider a minority, although I don't believe in those terms. I believe everybody's equal, but she's a minority. She's Latina, and she's rich. She's rich. She's been able to do a craft a skill. It's not really a skill. It's an art, I guess. And she's been paid for it. And she's been paid a lot more than other people of different races. I mean, I guess she could speak on that. But the reality is, I mean, who is this person? I don't remember her ever doing anything where I was like, stopped in my tracks and was like, that is unbelievable. You remember the scene in Lethal Weapon? I don't know if all of you have seen Lethal Weapon, but there was a scene in there where Mel Gibson was sitting on the couch and he was so distraught because his wife had been killed and he was thinking about killing himself. That was real acting. I know that's a crazy way to bring it up, but that scene for some reason sticks out in my mind as real acting. Really, he really looked distraught. I don't know of anything that Eva Longoria has ever done as far as acting goes that was even above a Lifetime TV special. But I'm not here to diss somebody's talent in acting. But it does show you, who these people bring up there to put in front of the cameras and push them out as somebody that you should listen to. As I was talking about at the beginning of the show, when I was giving you your tasking, I was having a conversation with somebody a little bit ago, and we're discussing on, how so many people will just believe what they're told, or they get information that can't be verified. It's an anonymous source, or they watch television or listen to talk radio, and they just take these opinions at face value, and that's it. And the question was, how can you tell if something is true? Well, first off, what you have to do is your own research. Okay. Don't just listen and say, oh yeah, that's got to be truth because Eva Longoria said it, or Michelle Obama, or anybody else in politics for that matter. You need to verify it. And this is one of the great things about President Trump. Okay. He said he was going to do certain things when he came into office. Some things he's done, some things he hasn't. I've been disappointed on the development of the wall, but there are portions of the wall that are coming up. I don't think it's a wall. It's more of a fence more than anything. And I just don't. I think it was done in a compromise with the left to say that it wasn't a wall, that it's a barrier. That's my opinion on that. I'm not happy about it. And hopefully one day somebody will fix and put up a wall, or just put the military on the southern border. But overall, the president has done a tremendous amount of the things that he's done. And, here's one of the greatest measures of a president. Can they keep the status quo? Now, I'm no Bill Clinton supporter. Don't think that I am. But one thing I can truly say about him versus Bush 41 or Bush 43 is that Bill Clinton, mainly because there wasn't a lot going on, but his time in office, not a lot changed. There was the one thing that he's actually halfway decent at is keeping the status quo. He's no big success. He makes people think that he's way better than he is. And, I guess he is pretty much of a failure as far as a human being goes, and a rapist. But the way that you can measure in this modern day politics of how somebody actually has done in their 4 to 8 years as president is if they didn't swing the curve way too far to the left or way too far to what the media would call the right. Okay, I disagree with as far as the right goes, and I've talked about this many times. I don't think that the way we measure politics, left and right, is appropriate. I don't think it really shows you exactly of what the truth is in politics. It's really whether or not you want to have freedom and a constructive citizenry, an empowered citizenry, or and also once you get that, is the government slow to change? Are these politicians slow to where they don't rush out and try to change it for change's sake or for revolutionary sake? And then you have the progressives, those who are always trying to quote unquote progress. And most of those people are led by individuals who want to change things so they can gain power. So I don't believe that that's a good measurement when we say the left and the right. But when you measure in modern day, because of the way the extremists are in politics, is if somebody can go into office and then at least one of the things that they can do well is keep things from drastically changing. Well, I think President Trump has done this better than anyone in office, considering the weight that is pulling towards that progressive communist side. And he's done an amazing job of that. He, to pull things back and recenter them around freedom and an empowered citizenry is going to take, I don't want to say it's going to take a civil war. I mean, I've already told you, I think we're in a civil war now, but it's going to take participation of the people, not just the president. That's one of the reasons why I always point out and always push that you should get out there and really coordinate and take charge and work together to ensure empowerment and freedom and dialogue, so you can have dialogue with each other, know each other. But when it comes to truth, one of the things that you have to, when you're trying to prove it, and the reason I go down this road talking about the presidents, is that you need to be able to verify things. If you cannot verify, then you cannot verify the truth. And if you cannot research it and find and create an opinion of your own, then the chances are that if you don't have something to substantiate your opinions, then you're being fed an ideological belief, you're being fed an opinion, or you're being controlled with puppet strings. You have to be able to. Now, there's certain things you are not going to be able to verify. And so here's my advice on that, is that the truth is not something that's mysterious. These mysterious sources, I don't like, quite frankly, Edward Snowden. I think he is somebody who did great damage to the United States. He could have done that in so many different ways. The fact is, that was the media, and that was Edward Snowden, who's a narcissist. This guy's a freaking fruitcake, and nothing he really did changed our lives. Nothing that Edward Snowden did and brought out was really that mysterious. I mean, if you are too stupid to realize, as your information goes out there and is passed all over Silicon Valley owns tech. And if you think what you do, on social media or through the internet is going to be private, you're kidding yourself. It's not. So Edward Snowden really didn't do anything to point out stuff that if you have half a brain, you wouldn't have realized already that was happening. And when it comes to Julian Assange, he's another narcissist who is a tech guy who determined, because he's an anarchist, he determined ways to injure different governments. Now, a lot of the stuff that's come out because of Julian Assange, I will say this, also proved things that we already knew, but we didn't actually have the proof for when it comes to the left. But it doesn't make him a hero. And a lot of that stuff, when it comes to the truth, and people read this, and this is what kills me, they'll go online, they'll see that there's been some kind of WikiLeaks has leaked something out, and they read it, and they're, oh my gosh, this is breaking. I've seen so many of these people that, have done nothing in their lives, and they're somehow become the big disseminators of information, all open source information. It's not like these people are running sources and gathering real intelligence, but they're they post this stuff and they have their opinions about what WikiLeaks has put out there. But honestly, ask yourself, the stuff that came out, did it do anything but really verify what you felt already? Yes, it verified it. But the fact is, even if you can't verify through WikiLeaks or anything else, or online sources or word of mouth by somebody who is close and personal, the truth is not mysterious. It doesn't take a Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or some kind of mysterious anonymous source. It doesn't take that to understand the reality of if you're going down the right road with truth and probably what's going to happen. I can give you a subject, and if you have ethics and morals, you're going to be able to at least go down the road where I think this is probably the case if you can't verify it. But most of the stuff, well, I wouldn't say most, a lot of the stuff that you hear in the news can be somewhat verified if you look at more than one source. You can start to develop a picture of the reality of what's happening. And also history. This is the one thing about tech that they have not been able to master. They do something that's far left. These idiots in Washington, D.C. do things, or Antifa, or any of these groups do stuff that's mysterious. they will turn around and accuse, this is how stupid they are. They turn around and then accuse the right or the president or whoever their enemy is. They will accuse them of doing the exact same thing. Once you see them accusing people of doing certain things that are really dramatic, you can almost bet your butt that they have done it themselves. And so historically, you can go back and you can look at these things, and that is where you can start to really develop a picture. If the media, if you can look at 5 or 10 different sources on Drudge Report, and they're all reporting something this exact way about President Trump, you can almost guarantee that it's not true or that it's been twisted. But when you add in there, the conservative, like I explained yesterday, doesn't mean that they're going to be honest with you as well. Fox News is far left now. But at least you can start to develop a little bit of a different picture. Again, though, if you can't verify, the truth is not mysterious. It's not something that you're going to be like, I didn't see that coming. I mean, sometimes when it comes to murders and things that I've dealt with when I was in the FBI, you sit here and you're like, how could that have happened? But you can't sit back and say, nah, there's no way that happened. Because when the truth is revealed, you will know. Most likely you will know. And one of the greatest determiners of whether or not you are going down the wrong road or not is if you're looking at this and you're saying, that's so mysterious, or you get the chills, or you think, I'm on to something. Well, you're either not onto something, you're following what somebody else wants you to think, or you're not doing your full research. You got to do your research. You've got to look at your sources. You got to listen to more than one person. Don't just listen to me. Go listen to some other people. But make sure you subscribe to my podcast and share it. but don't just take my word for these things. Now, if we are in a hurry and there's breaking news and something comes out, I will give you my analysis and I'll give you what I know. But I don't ever, and I've been on news many times where people have said, well, live on television, on CNN or Fox, and they say, well, don't you think this? And I say, well, I don't have any proof of that. Well, it's most likely this. And I say, I don't know. I can't tell you that for sure, for instance, that is a terrorist attack if I don't have the information. I remember one time, one of the former deputy directors from the FBI was on, and he was live from somewhere else, and I was in studio, and he was talking about how, and I believe it was a San Bernardino attack that we were talking about in California, and he was saying that this is obviously a militia group, probably white supremacists, and I had no idea where he was coming up with this information, and that was kind of a defining moment for me because I just said it right out. I was like, there is no information that shows this is a white supremacist or that this is a militia attack. And to say otherwise, or to say that it is very dangerous and incompetent to say that. And it was more, there was more as far as tactics, techniques, and procedures go in the way that was carried out, most likely a terrorist attack. But even I said at this point, we don't know until we get information that verifies who these people are or gives us an indicator. We don't fully know. But at that point in time, there had been no militia attacks. There had been no white supremacist attacks like had been pointed out by this deputy director. But the fact is, he's a shill for the left, and he was just putting on a show. But you have to take a stand when you are trying to verify things. Now, why did I go down this road at all today? After going over and listening again to yesterday's show, and I'll go listen back to what I talked about the day before. It just keeps standing out to me that the left keeps playing this game, and they're getting better and better at it because they're involved in, like I said, not just Silicon Valley, but the intel industry and media, and they bounce back and forth, and they learn what works and what doesn't work, and then they employ those tactics on conservatives and on people who are running in politics that they, in a way that they don't believe ideologically. So it's something that was sticking out in my brain, and people are extremely disturbed by what's happening. Extremely disturbed. I know if you're listening to this, I mean, probably the majority of you out there are sitting back on a daily basis and saying, how did we get here? How did it happen this fast? The fact is, it didn't happen this fast. The fact is, it's been happening for years and years and years and years. But we chalked it up to, a dumb politician, or, that's just that, they're just a little bit more liberal than they are over here, or we would have the media and Saturday Night Live and all these people criticize somebody who was conservative, like they used to make Ronald Reagan look like he was a warmonger, or he was trying to destroy the world with his conservatism. And so we get pushed back and forth. It's like, you ever watch Will Ferrell and the other guy when they used to go to the nightclubs, that one skit that they used to do, and they'd have Sherry O'Terry in the middle of them. They'd just be bouncing her back and forth all over the place like they're dancing with her. And that's the way it is. We just would get bounced back and forth. But by and large, it's happened because, and it's been allowed to progress because we don't go out and do our research. By and large, that's it. And so people end up building heroes in their mind. They end up getting used to being told by certain news agencies or certain personalities that this is the truth, and they never question it. And that's how we get to where we are. So I'm going through now as I'm looking at the Democrat Party and these people that are speaking, and it's like one of these cheesy Hollywood award shows is what it's like. And I saw a headline that was very disturbing, again, on Fox News. Don't think I just go to Fox News. I'm pulling from all different websites here, but this one actually particularly stood out to me, again, because it's Fox News and everybody thinks it's conservative. And the headline was, this is at the top of foxnews.com, old and new guard collide. Well, I've been talking about that for a long time, about how the new people there are just as left as the old people, but they're just moving faster. And it says, the headline is, Dems will attempt to present united front between party elders, rising stars at second night of convention. So here's what bothers me about this. Okay, rising stars, talking about people in politics like they're a celebrity is a dangerous thing. You look at throughout history, the way kings and queens and powerful people like Hitler have made themselves out to be something greater than they are. Look at the majority of celebrities. The majority of celebrities that I worked around. Now, there's some that I've worked around that were really good. They were nice people. And some of them that are actually quite normal. But most of them, especially when it comes to the music industry, are as doped up as they can be. And listen, whatever you do with your life is fine. It doesn't make any difference to me. But the fact is, these are the people that end up turning around and believing that they know what freedom and what the country is all about. And they've never done anything except smoke dope, and they may have a good voice, or they got a break in a movie or an actor. Well, politicians are the same way. They're high on power. A lot of them probably high on dope as well, but there's nothing celebrity about them at all. There was a time when we gave ticker tape parades in New York City, but before I was born, for people who came back from war, who really fought a war. Not something that, that's when we fought wars back in World War II, where we went and decimated an enemy. We fought to eliminate that enemy completely. We don't fight like that anymore. But there was a time when they would have those people, or the astronauts from way back. I'm not saying astronauts now don't do incredible jobs, but the astronauts from, the Apollo era, those are people that were pioneers. They were pioneers, and they didn't have the technology, and they were making it up as they go along. They didn't have 50 years of trial and error so that they could shoot off up to the space station or wherever they're wanting to go. We had ticker tape parades for people like that because they had done really amazing things, and they were worthy of praise. I don't know what this is when I look at the picture of these weirdos that are on this headline, and to call these people the elders, the rising stars and the elders. I would hope that you never fall under the spell of any type of ideology that tells you have to have elders. Now, I know there's many people, I'm Christian, and there's many people that I know, good people, that follow different, they want to call it Christianity, but they follow different sects of Christianity or different denominations that say they have to have elders to interpret the Bible. Well, that's just nonsense. That Jesus, the Messiah, said that he is the way, he is the light, and he is the only thing that you should be worried about when it comes. He is the elder. He is the one, he is the attorney, if you want to put it that way, that will go before you and fight the fight for you. He's already paid the debt. So he can go in front of God and say, I've already paid the debt for this person. They're good to go. And it's up to you to learn what you need to learn here and then go on to the next life and get that extra training and be the person that you're supposed to be. That's not going to end here. But that's the only elder that you should be concerned with. Anybody that tells you differently in the Christian church, at least, you are going down a road. And also, if anybody tells you, yes, that's the Bible, the Word of God, but you need to worship from this book as well, get away from it. It's a lie. It's created by man. Now, I'm not trying to preach a sermon here, but it's a good example of how you take what Christians say is the Word of God, and in that word, it says you should never add or take away from this book. And it also said, this is the end. This is it. Jesus is the way. But yet people will turn and look for elders in their church or in their denomination or in their ideology. Anytime. Now, listen, I do believe that we should listen to older people in this nation. One of the reasons why, and unfortunately, the generation that we should really be listening to, they're gone pretty much. There's very few people from the World War II generation still alive. And those are the ones who really probably could have said, we should not have done things when we came back from World War II to this extent, because really that was the beginning of failure in this country after World War II. Succeeded so great, and then they came back, spoiled their children, and everything kind of just changed. It went downhill, with the exception of equal rights. But when you look at celebrities, when you look at politicians, you should not look at them as stars. You should not look at them as elders. You should not be looking at them as anything but the jesters from the king's court that danced around and told jokes or juggled. That's all an actor is. I hate to hurt the actors out there. Yes, you have a craft, and some of you are amazing at what you do, just like singers. I'm not taking away from your gift. In the Bible, the harp is mentioned over and over again as this incredible instrument and brought peace on people. Listen, there's a skill there. I'm not taking away from your skill, but you there's no worshiping you. And if you think that the elders in the Democrat Party are worthy of praise, look at where we are now. Some of these people have been around for 40 years in government. Whew. Getting on a tangent here. So that headline was very disturbing to me. And here, this is the ramification of people who blindly follow these types of things. It is unbelievable when people follow blindly. And here's a perfect example of that yesterday in the DNC at their convention, they had a girl get up there and she talked about her father who quote unquote trusted Trump and then died of COVID. And in the same breath, which you're going to hear, where she lays out this whole story about her dad trusted the president, he then went out to a karaoke bar where I guess they say he caught it and then he died of COVID. Just listen to her words.
Hi. I'm Kristen Urquiza. I'm one of the many who has lost a loved one to COVID. My dad, Mark Anthony Urquiza, should be here today, but he isn't. He had faith in Donald Trump. He voted for him, listened to him, believed him and his mouthpieces when they said that coronavirus was under control and going to disappear, that it was okay to end social distancing rules before it was safe, and that if you had no underlying health conditions, you'd probably be fine. So in late May, after the stay-at-home order was lifted in Arizona, my dad went to a karaoke bar with his friends. A few weeks later, he was put on a ventilator. And after 5 agonizing days, he died alone in the ICU with a nurse holding his hand.
Now, she goes on to say that her father had no underlying condition. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not going to take her word for it, because the majority of people that I saw that were that age that caught COVID and died, they either that one of two things. They got an extremely high contact of the virus, right? Which I didn't even know about before COVID came along, that you can get a huge load of this virus and it's going to have much more of an impact on you if you have a high load. He went to a karaoke bar. Who knows? He could have had a very high load of this virus. Also, I'm not going to take her word for it that he had no underlying condition. She's obviously a leftist. She obviously was handpicked to say this stuff, and it's quite obvious that that's who she is. So I can't see, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to truth. She's going to blame her father's death on President Trump when this man had the freedom to make the choice on whether or not to go out when. Listen, I don't care what President Trump says. If we know that there's a virus floating around, until I know that it's really not dangerous, and again, I had COVID, so I'm speaking to this, and I have somebody who was very close to me that died from it. If I don't know the reality of this virus, why in the world would I ever go out and just put myself out there until I see what? That's why I was all for the lockdown at first. I think it was a smart thing. I think we tried it, and then we realized, at least I realized, I think it was cause and effect. No, not cause and effect, trial and error. It was easy to see that the lockdown just was not going to work. We also saw that murderers like Cuomo and other Democrat governors put the COVID positive patients into the elderly clinics, and that's what caused a massive amount of death. Over 60,000, probably way more than that, people, I would say almost half of the people that have died from COVID came from positive people being put into elderly clinics where these people were compromised. So when I listen to this, what I'm seeing here is a controlled narrative by somebody who's obviously a leftist, hates Trump, and has used their own father's incompetent decision to go out and act like nothing was there. I believe they live in San Francisco, where the homeless and the craziness out there of how it spread, and some of the worst people for spreading this have been these protesters. Well, this girl's father went out, did something that was not smart at all, and he got it. I mean, it's not like he went to the grocery store with a mask and gloves on at a point where we didn't know the reality of what's going on, and he Lysoled his groceries when he brought them home, took his shoes off, as we discussed on this show with Dr. Lucarini, practices that kept me from getting it until I was forced to interact with somebody who had collapsed, who had it. And then we all got it. But the point is, that wasn't an incompetent move. That was something I had to do. And I knew at that point the potential was there that if they had it, I was going to get it. Because I wasn't stupid to the fact that it was a virus. But for this girl to come out and say this is just ridiculous. But listen, that's the way these people are. And not just people on the left. When I say these people, I'm talking about people, and you may be in this category. If you are, you need to take a step back and look at it. I'm talking about people who just take whatever they're told for granted or for the gospel truth. You need to do your research. Now, I'm going to give you an example of somebody who did not take it for granted. Somebody who didn't just assume that Governor Cuomo is the reason why their father died. It was not obvious until after Danny Alvino died, and then they got the medical records and they saw the reality of what had occurred. Now, you've heard the Real Politidiva on this show before, and she came on here, Tracy Belmonte, and she had a couple days ago given her testimony in front of some of the Senate here in New York. And so this is a person who actually did her research, didn't just take for granted that, her father caught it in an elderly clinic because other people did, or because, or he just had the virus because Trump, for whatever reason, like this girl was saying, because Trump said it was safe. Nobody took that for granted. But what happened in this case is she will tell you that her father was in the clinic because he had neck surgery and needed to have rehab for 2 weeks. But because Cuomo made a criminal decision to put these people in there, full well knowing that they were the most susceptible, there is real evidence. There is something that you can look at and say, this really does show proof. So just listen to her words.
Truth is, none of us should be here today. My father's death, along with thousands of others, was preventable. The only reason we are here today is because of the criminally negligent decisions of Governor Andrew Cuomo. My father, Daniel Alvino, was my hero. He loved football. It was his life. And he had just retired from being a Section 11 football referee for 35 years because he had some orthopedic issues, which led him into surgery on March 11th of this year. My dad needed rehabilitation after his neck surgery and was admitted to Our Lady of Consolation Nursing Home and Rehabilitation Center in West Islip on March 19th. We had issues from this facility right from the start. My father, a Vietnam-era veteran, was made to sit in his own waste for hours on end. He had a collar around his neck for the surgery. And because of the surgery, he was in great pain using his hands and needed help to eat. His aide would not help him because she said, "You don't help yourself." And he had to eat with his face down in a dish like he was an animal. He didn't even have his teeth brushed for at least 5 days by his count. He would complain to us about blisters on his feet that were killing him, and because of the collar, he couldn't see that he had a deadly cellulitis infection that was caused from neglect, just letting him sit in a wheelchair for days, rotting there. On March 23rd, we were called and we were told that there was COVID in the facility, but the person didn't have symptoms and they were very well isolated and that my father was in no danger. But of course, we immediately wanted to take him out. We were discouraged from doing this because we were told the insurance would not cover his treatment and it would be thousands and thousands of dollars, and we were forced to leave him in. We know now that it wasn't one person. We know it was all over that rehab facility and that at least 40 people died in the center, not including the people that died in hospitals later on. On March 27th, he told us he was running fevers. When I spoke to his nurse, he downplayed it and flat out lied and said that my dad was not running fevers, but he was because it was in his medical records. My father would hear people coughing profusely and ambulances coming and going, and told me that if we didn't get him out of the facility that I put him in, that he was going to die there. He was released on March 30th. His stay was only 11 days long. And it's amazing what damage was done in those 11 days. When I picked him up, he was in terrible shape. When we got him home, he collapsed on the driveway, complaining of being too tired to make it to the steps. My mother, boyfriend, and brother laid my father down on the driveway and covered him with a blanket. On April 1st, he started to run a fever, and we had no choice but to call an ambulance. He was diagnosed with COVID on April 2nd and was placed on a ventilator in the early morning hours, and we never saw him again. Upon looking into my father's discharge paperwork from the nursing home, there was a paper buried in an envelope that stated he had COVID symptoms and he was labeled a COVID suspect. The nursing home didn't test him, they didn't treat him, and they didn't tell us that he was a COVID suspect. As you can guess, my mother, my boyfriend, my brother, and I all developed COVID right after. My mother was so sick, I thought she was going to die and I was going to lose both of my parents. But luckily, by the grace of God, she's here. And my brother developed double pneumonia. I now have post-viral syndrome and have neurological symptoms. My father is not counted in the total number of nursing home victims because he died in a hospital on April 14th alone. Thousands of people like him are not counted. On March 25th, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order to put COVID patients into nursing homes. And we knew as far back as February 17th that COVID was the deadliest to the elderly and immunocompromised. Our own Dr. Anthony Fauci said that in many, many interviews all throughout February. Why then did we spend millions on auxiliary hospitals that didn't see one patient if we weren't going to use them? Did anyone in Cuomo's administration give any sort of pause to this directive that it wasn't a good idea to put these infected patients in with the most vulnerable? Families were kept out of nursing homes so that we didn't accidentally bring the virus in. But Cuomo mandated into the facilities anyway, and we demand to know why. We deserve answers. If he didn't sign that mandate, thousands of people would be alive and well today.
So there you go. That's two different stories about fathers that have died because of COVID. But you see, the first one that I played from the Democrat convention floor has to do with a young woman who's ideologically left, who believes the narrative, or at least is potentially playing the game with those who are making the narrative, that the president caused her father's death by telling them that the virus was not as bad as they were as first thought. Now, what's interesting about this is that had those COVID positive patients not been put in elderly home that Tracy Belmonte was just talking about, the death rate would not be as high as it has been. And like we're seeing now, the infection rate is high, but the death rate is not high. And actually, the president would have been correct in saying what he did. But it was because of Cuomo and these other Democrat governors that the death rate was so high. So when I listened to that first testimony and what she is saying, the young woman is saying about her father, who decided on his own to go to a karaoke bar, basing whatever, like I said before, it doesn't matter who tells you what. You need to be smart and verify information. If he took that the president said it's not as bad as what they're saying, and he just decided to live his own life, happy-go-lucky, singing in karaoke bars when he's 65, which the president did say way back as early as February and March, that is elderly, it's over like 60, I think, were the most susceptible to this virus and the dangers of it. Then if he would have made that decision on his own and followed his own common sense, he'd still be alive, according to his daughter. But when we listen to what Tracy Belmonte had to say about her father, the difference is they did everything they could to keep him safe. But and supposedly the elderly clinic was safe. That's why he went there. But apparently that it's ran by criminals, and Governor Cuomo in New York mandated that COVID positive patients be put there. So the whole point of this whole thing here is to show you the difference between the truth and not the truth. When you listen to Tracy, what you're seeing is fact. You're seeing the reality. And when you hear the story, it's tragic, but there's no surprise there. It's no mystery how that happened. There's no great leap to go from this is what I feel to this is what I'm saying is proof when there's no proof, like it was in the first story. There's no way to link President Trump with that man's death because he went to a karaoke bar. But there is a way to link Cuomo to the death of all these elderly. They're saying now, the president was saying there's upwards of 11,000 people in New York alone because of these Democrat governors. The bottom line with this is the way truth is. You see that when you get the facts, you sit back and you say, wow, I can point A, B, and C. Or I can only point A to B, but it's a logical and most likely assumption that C is the next one in order. But when you hear the other stories, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just ideological banter is all it is. Let's take a break. I'm going to come back, and I just want to play a couple other things, and we'll call this one a day. We'll be right back. You've probably heard me talk about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness in Attack Survival. But what you may not realize is that it's not just a book that you read. It's a book that you apply. For those people who have read it or listened to it on audiobook, they would tell you that once you gain this knowledge, it will change your life forever. Understanding how an attacker sees you is a life-changing experience, and it's not rocket science. This book shows you how they systematically target you and how you can take that knowledge to turn around and apply into better defenses or awareness or overall security. Now, there's 2 workbooks that you can take this knowledge and apply. The first one is the threat assessment workbook, where you actually do a threat assessment on yourself, on your business, your church, your school, your city, your country. Workbook number 2 is where you take that information from the threat assessment and you develop your defenses on paper before you go out and spend money and time. Sheep Know More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. That's your knowledge base. Workbook number 1, the threat assessment, is how you look at yourself from the attacker and apply it. And workbook number 2, the defense assessment, is the culmination of all that into your defenses. There is nothing else out there like this. No course, no book, nothing. Go get it. Sheep Know More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 accompanying workbooks. Make your homeland secure again. Go get it wherever books are sold. All right. Now, out of all the stuff that I've seen from the DNC and all these different things that people are saying and all the speeches that are going on up there, this is the one thing. Well, there's 2 things that I want to bring up, I guess. The 2 things. One is a soundbite, but one is the president yesterday. Actually, I think it might have been today. He pardoned Susan B. Anthony, and everybody's like, Susan B. Anthony, that's the woman from the coin. But here's the thing about Susan B. Anthony that most people don't realize is that she was charged with because in 1872 she violated laws that permitted only men to vote, and she was later convicted for voting illegally and sentenced to pay a $100 fine and court costs. Now, what's interesting is that the president pardoned her, and the left is trying to spin this into something that they're trying to make the president look bad for doing this. But that's the way the left does. They will take whatever they can and spin it to make themselves look good and president look bad. And don't when I say the president, the fact is you are also, now it's one thing that you need to consider is that when they are trying to make President Trump look bad, they're also trying to make you look bad. There's just no 2 ways about it. They're trying to make the goal here is to not only kill the momentum that the president has, but kill the momentum for the president, which means they're insulting him, they're insulting you. They're degrading him, they're degrading you. They're putting you in a category with him. Now, here's the only soundbite out of all these things that I have seen, and I went through a lot of them, the speeches, and it's painful. You should be like sending me presents for what I'm doing for you. Going through this nonsense and listening to these idiots. Chris Wallace is one of them.
It's interesting. Michelle Obama, as she said, doesn't like politics. And she said that this speech was her main contribution to the Biden campaign. It was a heck of a contribution. She really flayed, sliced and diced Donald Trump, talking about the chaos and confusion and lack of empathy, especially coming from this president and from this White House. Spoke more about the deficits of Donald Trump than the pluses of Joe Biden, but did talk about especially, not so much policies, but especially his empathy, what he's been through and his care.
So Chris Wallace is one of the biggest idiots on television. I mean, I've never met the guy when I was at Fox, but honestly, this guy and the stuff that spews out of his mouth, when you're on Fox or a conservative, Fox isn't really conservative anymore. Like I said yesterday, there's only 3 shows that are really conservative. But the people who tune into Fox, they're not just looking for a conservative ideological spin. They're looking for truth. And when idiots like Chris Wallace comes on there and then spins this stuff and makes it sound like Michelle Obama did this great eviscerating speech that just crushed Trump, and then I go listen to that stuff, and it's not like that. It is laughable, but it's also cringeworthy that people would actually give this guy a microphone and let him speak. Now, out of all of Michelle Obama's speech, right, which was she must be on antidepressants because it was as flat as a tone-deaf teenager. You know, I talk a lot about the truth on the show, and in particular on today's episode, about how when you seek truth, how it's not going to be a mystery when it's revealed to you. It's something that is and it's verifiable. Often when I was in the FBI and criminals would tell all these lies, they would say one truthful thing and it would just jump out in the open. And out of all the Democrat convention, one thing that I've seen that Michelle Obama actually said that was truthful just jumped right off the screen.
As I've said before, being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are.
That is verifiable truth. You can look at the failures of her husband, and you can look at the successes of President Donald J. Trump and all the pressure that he's under. He is a winner. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.